Alright guys, you haven't seen me talk about this one in any of the videos yet. This is a Ferrari F430 engine. This was an ongoing project we had before the YouTube channel started, and we've been waiting on one part in order to put this thing together. And this part will surprise you. That is the part. Now you can't tell what it is, but I'll show you. Yep, just some bolts, 16 bolts. Now what makes these bolts pretty special is these are replacement rod bolts. This engine came in, it had major oil consumption issues and a list of other problems. It ended up becoming a full engine rebuild. And in that process, of course, you tear the entire engine down. The block gets separated in both halves, the pistons are removed, the rods are removed, the crank's removed. New bearings have been installed, which are pretty expensive on their own, but the rod bolts themselves are torque to yield bolts. Now what that means is they're one-use throwaway. The torquing process on them, you torque to a specific value and then to a degree, and that degree torquing process actually stretches the bolt to keep a constant tension on the hardware. So in that process, you have to replace these bolts. These bolts are very hard to get, and they're very expensive. I want to say these bolts, I don't have the number right off the top of my head, but I believe they were close to, if not more than, $2,000 for the set of 16 bolts just to reinstall these rods. So yes, Ferrari maintenance is very expensive, and some of the parts can be quite hard to get. So even at that dollar amount, these took months to get. We finally received them, so I'm going to resume the assembly process of this engine. I don't want to bore you with a lot, so I may record a few clips here and there, but other than that, I've got a camera set up to do a time lapse of this assembly. Enjoy it. I want to show you a few other things before we start the time lapse. So I'm bringing you in halfway through this project. Now, there's lots of things going on here. Don't mind the kind of cluster we have here. As you know, we have several other projects going on in the shop right now. So I'm working out of this corner for the moment. So the position I'm at right now is we have the new bearings installed. We just verified clearances, oil clearances through all of these bearings. There's multiple methods. We mic'd all of the bearings and surfaces, as well as checking the good old school plastic gauge just to make sure our readings are all accurate. Now, there's a lot of things that come into building these engines, and that includes everything down to, obviously, new O-rings, new seals, new gaskets everywhere. But on top of that, there's a lot of the same OEM components that these were assembled with. Now, Ferrari calls for Molykote, which is made by DuPont now. It wasn't back then, but DuPont bought out Molykote, as well as this 1211 silicone gasket maker. As you can imagine, assembling this engine is a very thorough, very detailed process. Because, simple as this, it's a 2-half block design. So instead of caps holding the crank in, it's actually 1/2 of the lower block mated to the top half of the lower block. So you don't want this gasket surfaced here to leak. If it leaks, you have a very bad day because it's pretty much a complete engine rebuild in order to reseal. So you want to be very cautious of that. Anyway, so some of the stuff you see going on here, this is the oil water pump. You may recognize this pump as it is actually the same assembly used on the 599. Kirsten just did a video replacing one on a 599. Same assembly, installed slightly different on the V8 engine. These are 2B headers, a common upgrade on these cars as the factory headers fail internally. You may have seen another one of my clips where the pipes on the OEM headers touch right here, and they'll actually eventually vibration and heat expansion, thermal expansion will cause these to blow out. Here you can see the heads. Those were fully gone through with Nolan, the same guys who are doing the Diablo heads as we speak. And cams are down here in this wax paper. It's just to keep them safe and keep them from corroding. They're oil coated. Over here we have the upper portion of the short block. The rods, rings, bearings, all that have already been installed. You'll notice that the old rod bolts are in it right now. That was used just to verify clearances on these rods. So the first thing I'm going to do this morning is go through and replace all of these and torque them to spec. Then I'm going to move on to gasket replacement, gasket surface preparation, and get ready to assemble the block. As I mentioned, I already installed the pistons and rings. However, I just wanted to throw out there, Ferrari technical information isn't always accurate. It can be. There can also be TSBs that change some of those measurements. And I mean, they give you a lot of information. They give you, like, you know, wear maximums, coaxiality, I can't even pronounce that word, which is out of round ovalness to a cylinder. So to be sure everything's accurate, you go through, we dig up all the TSBs, we get the technical information, as well as taking initial measurements from the old components, and then measurements multiple times from the new items and compare and contrast between the two and look for any discrepancies. As you can see, I've already done all of that. That's all completed. Everything there checks out. Alright guys, got the oil sump reattached. The mains are all torqued. The side oil pan screws are all torqued. The silicone is obviously already there. Everything here is good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and roll it over and we're going to start working on the top end. So if you remember meeting Brad at Nolan's machine shop, that's who did these heads, and I just wanted to show you how really nice this turned out. Now it's got a little bit of oil residue left on it that I'm going to finish degreasing here in a moment before we set this head, but I mean, it's really nice. Looks brand new. Alright guys, got the head surface cleaned up. Took a little bit of Scotch-Brite to get off any oxidization or anything that's taken place since the engine was torn down. Whole top of it's ready to go, degreased. We're about to apply just a little bit of silicone sealant right here on the ends where it meets the timing cover as per directed by the service information. We'll drop our head gasket on. We'll lubricate our threads to our studs here, and then the head will slide on and it'll be assembly time. Hey guys, it's Chaz, Black Horse Motorworks. So today's video is going to be pretty interesting. I'm going to bring you along for one of the most stressful parts of my job. This is for most mechanics in any case. There are two situations that are very stressful for us in general. And the first one, most stressful I think, is the first startup after an engine build. So here we have a Ferrari F430. This has been an ongoing project here for over a year now. Most of that's related to supply chain issues and machine work. This 430 showed up. It was purchased at auction by the current owner, sent directly to us to get all the maintenance caught up on it. We found it was consuming 2 to 3 quarts of oil in 20 to 30 minutes of idle time. Not normal at all. Now there's a long list of problems that this car had, many other issues that were unsorted. The car has been messed with before, and it was maintained by someone that was not used to maintaining a Ferrari, so there were a lot of things done incorrectly and some shortcuts that were taken that shouldn't have been. We've been fully through the car, and over the last year and a half have completely rebuilt the engine. And when I say that, I mean everything from the crankshaft up. Now let me spin you around here. So as you can tell, there's still some aftermarket stuff going on here, not a ton. These airbox lids are not original. That's not a big deal. That's not going to change the way it runs. It does have headers. That was because this had the older style catalyst based headers that are known to fail on the 430s. Other than that, it is mostly back to being a stock car. Now I can't start it quite yet because I've got to finish rebleeding the F1 system. Part of the engine assembly was the clutch was disconnected, and we ended up actually losing some fluid in that process. So I've got to rebleed the clutch, not a big deal, and then it'll be time to do the initial start. Now the initial start sequence on these cars after an engine build is quite interesting, and you'll see it. I'll kind of walk you through it as we do it, but give me a little bit. I'm going to rebleed this system, and then it's time to turn the key. Alright guys, time for the drama. So this is going to be the first time trying to start this car after a complete bottomette engine build. We've already rolled the engine through to build oil pressure so that everything here is saturated in oil. It's got some oil in it, it has coolant, it has brake fluid, obviously we didn't touch that system. The F1 system has been bled, the power steering system has been bled. It's the moment of truth. So what we're going to do here is we're going to start this. Part of the seating procedure for the rings is to immediately bring the engine up to about 2,500 to 3,000 RPM and hold it there throughout its heating cycle, bring it up to temperature. Now that may be interrupted if we find a leak or anything I need to stop for, but that'll be the plan. So we're going to start. She's going to verify that there's oil pressure, and then we're going to maintain 2,500 to 3,000 RPM. You're going to see me run around like a crazy person. I do expect the exhaust to smoke a bit. It was saturated in oil from the previous issues the car had, so it's going to burn all of that out. I've got the door open behind us to help ventilate. But we're going to go from there, and moment of truth. All right. Key on, F1 pump's prime.
friends, is a freshly built 430.